last week on the Appalachian Liturgy podcast.
To be quite frank, like a lot of the people who are in recovery are using substance abuse. This doesn't mean everybody in poverty, but a lot of people, it's people in poverty. So, people come and they, go to your food banks, or like we do community meals. They go through the line and they pick up community meals. And I think that's a great way for them to help out, but I don't necessarily know if that's a great way to get them to come to church. Because if they're coming to your church to get handouts, because they need it, they're probably not going to feel comfortable to come and sit in church with you and worship with you that Sunday.
Here's my question. How do you mess up a son?
Okay, so we're down a rabbit trail.
That's our first rabbit hole.
We are required to go down rabbit trails.
Yeah, we really are.
But mom's healthy coping mechanism is going and getting a coffee if she needs it, and it just so happens that it's legal.
You talked a couple times about a community and growing on TikTok. Is there something specific about TikTok that you think makes it easier or better for sharing things like this?
Well, it's a video platform. So, but it's also not, on Facebook, a lot of people just have like their families or their friends that they go on high school with, whatever, along those sorts. I'll have dad's church people, I've had little old ladies that dads have from all of his churches are on my Facebook. Facebook for me is a lot more private. Like what I would put on TikTok, may not be what I would put on Facebook or vice versa. I post pictures of Hudson every single day on Facebook. I may not post those on TikTok, but TikTok, it has a For You page. So, as your video trends and that kind of thing, it reaches other audiences that aren't necessarily following you. So I think that's a reason why your accounts grow pretty quickly. But it's just videos and they have like little sound things, and then you can get on different sides of TikTok as well. There's recovery TikTok, baby TikTok, whatever, but they start kind of linking you with your people, whatever you like. If you like fishing videos, it'll start linking you with fishing videos,
So what inspired you to make your first TikTok about recovery? Because I remember when that happened.
I was just to the point where I was open about sharing it, which for a while, I didn't share that much in class. I just shared kind of what I've needed to. But I started seeing a lot more stuff on just social media, stuff on TikTok that made me feel more comfortable with it. But at this point, I just felt like everybody knew that I was in recovery anyways. But I'll be honest, when I posted it on my TikTok, I wasn't expecting it to get 62,000, views on it, that it blew up. And that was like my first video that I had really ever made. So I really wasn't expecting it to get that big, but the love and support that I got from it really opened my eyes a little bit more from it too, but don't get me wrong, TikTok can be a very negative place, but the recovery community on TikTok is very uplifting. People just dropping their sobriety dates, people dropping, oh, I'm 3 days sober, or, oh, I'm 8 years sober, they'll drop, we do recover on your, stuff. And you just have thousands of comments of these people saying, welcome to the recovery family, blah, 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 just overwhelming love and support from them. And it balances out the people who hate on you on TikTok.
That makes sense, because it almost seems like counterintuitive to where you're talking about like these things you do in a close-knit community, and then you're posting also to the whole world to see there. But I guess you're talking about like, you can find community in that type of thing that you wouldn't have otherwise found.
Which
so that makes sense.
So Facebook, I'll post pictures of Hudson in the bathtub. I won't post that on TikTok. It's a little bit different.
You can control Facebook a little more than
and I know TikTok. But also, to be completely honest with you, sometimes I feel more accepted by some of the people on TikTok. So I'm more open on TikToks than I am on my Facebook. And a lot of that's because I won't share a lot of the stuff that I see. I won't say a lot of the stuff I see. Why? Because I have my dad's church family that just is flooded on my Facebook. My Facebook is very G-rated. Very G-rated.
Recovery is not G-rated.
I am PG-13 all the way through, sometimes rated R. But my Facebook, my Facebook's preschool approved. It's very, just positive. It's not.
Facebook is the
I
fake
don't share
community
memes,
thing.
even
And
sober memes that are funny. I won't share stuff that hardly has bad words in it. I won't do any of that because it upsets a lot of the church people that I have
Right.
friends on Facebook.
So here are some things that I think, when we're talking practical things that the church could do, right? Is when you have people who are early in recovery or in active addiction, you need not to hold them to the same standards as you would somebody who has not been through that. Like, you are going to hear things, they're going to use language, they're going to, you better be okay with that, right? Like, you don't have to.
You have to take the good and the bad.
Right.
You've got to take the nitty gritty to be able to celebrate with them at the end, I think.
Yeah. I think too, you can't be hung up on, if you have 12-step meetings that are happening in your church, you better not be complaining that somebody's smoking outside the door of your church, right? Like, that it drives me insane. People want to have these programs, but what they really want is they want people to already be clean when they come into the programs. That's what they're wanting, right? That's not what happens. You need to be open. And there are times, and we've talked about this, when people are a danger to themselves and others. That's different. But if somebody walks in and they're high, you can't just throw them out. Like, and it depends on the substance. I mean, there are some substances that you've got to be careful if somebody's on. You don't want somebody shooting up on the bench right outside your kitchen door. They're going to be a danger to themselves and others, right? Because you don't want some of that paraphernalia. But if you're going to be open to those in active addiction and those in the recovery community, you're going to have some cigarette butts in your parking lot. You better be okay with people drinking copious amounts of coffee.
Yeah, that caffeine's a big one. Listen, I drink a Bang every single day. Every single day. I do not go a day without a Bang, and I probably drink coffee too. My boss tells me that I drink so much caffeine, if he was to drink it, that every arm or every hair on his arm and his head would be standing straight up. And it doesn't even faze me, but I say it doesn't faze me because I'm not a normie. Like, we always say, like, the caffeine doesn't faze the normies, like it doesn't faze us like it does the normies. People can't.
What's a normie?
Sober people. Sober
people who people have been sober their whole lives.
We call them normies. Y'all are the normies, so
it's kind of like muggles
for me.
Muggles.
Yeah, like a Bang for me, that's nothing, but for somebody else, they're probably jacked to high heavens. We keep coffee flowing every single day. But what I will say with, like, the cigarette butts and the vape, I will never forget. One time I was standing outside of my dad's, like, it wasn't the office, it was downstairs near the kitchen, and I had my vape sitting right here in my bra strap, and I put my hand down and reach in, I pull it out, and one of the ladies starts laughing. She thought it was hilarious. She says, I keep everything in my bra too, keys, phone, everything else. She wasn't upset that I was getting my vape and I was sitting outside vaping. She laughed. She was like, I keep everything in there too, and you felt comfortable.
I think it's important for the church to be authentic, just in any capacity, like the pastor of a church, to be authentic, to show your authentic self. And I think that's going to be a big draw for a lot of people in recovery, but other situations too, that we were just talking about, people in poverty who don't feel comfortable coming. Well, if you were being authentic and people could see what your issues are, then if we're not trying to hide everything, if we're not trying to come off as being holier than thou, and that's the problem I had. Go ahead, Anna.
Personally, like, and I mean this in the most respectful way, but I feel prepare yourself. I mean this in the most respectful way, but I feel like church comes across as very put on. It comes across as a show. It comes across as people come in, they dress nice, they sit in these pews, they have all this loud, nice music. They pass around communion, they do these long drawn out prayers, it feels almost like a put on show. Like, people come and sit in this not to actually do worship, but because they feel like they have to be there, or they feel like, they're here to almost save face they've come to put on this show. Not that that's what is happening, but that's the way it comes across sometimes. You know, you've got the lights, you've got the things on, you know, the projectors, you know, you're wearing mics. These people are coming up and they're telling, you know, these huge face stories, and it just is a lot. You know, it almost looks like a production. And I think, you know, that's where people who are struggling with addiction and not sure if they even, you know, can tie it into religion, I think it's very hard for them to attach to that.
Yeah, I am more and more convinced that our worship services are not where we invite people to. It's in the connection outside of that. And that worship is where once you kind of deal with what you think all this is, then you come to worship, right? It's not the culminating thing. I want people to come to worship because they want to be there, not because they're trying to please me or, you know, trying to fit in. I don't know. I want them to come because they want to come to worship. I think too, being super honest and having boundaries with people who are in active addiction or recovery is really important. One of the conversations we had when Anna came back to live with us was we didn't want cigarettes in the house. I hate the smell of cigarette smoke. But I mean, if I had my druthers, she wouldn't vape. Right.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. So.
And so, well, and that's what, I mean, she just said, it's not going to like, I have to have this.
Straight blunt said, that's not going to happen.
And I said, okay, so here's the deal. If you won't smoke cigarettes, I will buy the vape stuff, you know, and you are now buying most of the vape stuff because you have a job, but it was a compromise on my part. But she had to say, I need this. And I needed to say, you can't do, this is the line for me. And you need to respect that line. And she did. You know, it was a pretty hard line.
Set or healthy boundaries that's a big thing that they stress when you are in recovery. That's part of a big thing that you set, you know, and your healthy boundaries with everybody's going to be different. You know, my healthy boundaries with my mom, it's not the same as my healthy boundaries with my sister. It's definitely not the same as my healthy boundaries with my son's father. You know, they all look very different, and you just have to you even have to set healthy boundaries with yourself, you know. And I think the church could work on that as well, just with each other, you know.
So y'all have any questions? I have something I want to ask her, but I don't want to derail us off of this topic.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of follow up a little bit on that and not really push back, but kind of defend where people might be coming from, I guess, because like I could see myself struggling a lot. Like if you're in a tough situation, you want to be aware of your weaknesses and try to be a better version of yourself too. And so I think lots of times as Christians, if we're put in a tough situation that we've never been in or not prepared to be in, that it can come off as a show because we've never been there before. And we want to, we want to be like, Brooke, you were talking earlier about you had somebody tell you you're too nice with people, you can't, run an addiction center. And then you're also talking about the opposite, to where when you're going through somebody who's in the early stages of recovery, they're really mean. You have to be very nice and, not let them lash out against you and, almost kind of have to take it. And that can almost seem a contradiction to somebody if you're not being truly authentic.
You don't have to take it.
Yeah, maybe the wrong word, but
yeah.
I mean, you got to, that goes with the healthy boundaries, you've got to not sugarcoat things, and that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what people, what they're going to want to hear. You don't have to tiptoe around their feelings or whatever. But I think a good way for people who haven't been there is maybe not necessarily ask personal questions. What was your drug of choice? How long have you been using, whatever, how people want to know the nitty gritty of it. And it kind of scares people away, I guess. Ask them more along the lines of, I don't know much about this. What can I do to, make this a safe place for you? Or how can I help you? I don't want to disturb your recovery. Is there anything that I need to know that's going to, make this harder or make this not, one of our words are triggers. Is there anything that I'm going to do necessarily that's going to trigger you? Is there anything that I, just ask them straight up, I guess, because everybody's kind of different. And I feel like most people will be upfront with you about that.
Yeah, I like that, and I think the way you corrected me too is kind of what I was going for too. Like I feel like I would kind of oscillate between two extremes if I wasn't ready and hadn't heard what you had said already. But I think that would help me now going forward. And I think a lot as a church, we want to avoid thinking about difficult subjects until we have to think about them or we have to kind of prepare for them. And so I feel like if we didn't wait until it actually came upon us before we actually either read the type of book you're talking about or talked to other people, made the actual effort to go out and do that and not avoid it until the last minute, that we might get a lot better at it. Because otherwise, like if you really might come from it from a trying to do the right thing and trying to be a better version of yourself for somebody there, but either use the wrong trigger word or approach it the wrong way, oscillate between being too nice and being, like you said, taking it when that's not really what you should be doing. And I feel like that might be a lot where we go wrong, in
or
situations
it's
like that.
If people know you have addiction problems or that kind of thing, and they're wanting to help you, they know you don't have a lot of money or whatever, and they just go out of their way and they bring you groceries, or they know you don't have a Thanksgiving dinner, so the church gets together and takes up an offering to give you Thanksgiving dinner. That is very nice, and it'll probably touch their heart, but it's going to make them feel isolated. It's going to make people know. I think the best way for people to go about it is there anything that I can do to help you in this process, or tell me what I can do, that will help you be able to move forward. Like, I don't want to set my boundaries, so I'm laying this one down here for you to for you to tell me, what you need. Tell me what you need to make this happen.
So I think, from my perspective, it's about communication, right? It's, hey, I know what it's like to struggle, and I know what it's like not to have a Thanksgiving dinner. Would it be helpful to you would you like that? Would you like for us to do that? And then to say no. I mean, I think for us normies, holidays have lots of happy memories. We all have our frustrations, for people who are early in recovery or even later in recovery or an active addiction. Holidays are not necessarily warm and fuzzy, right? I mean,
to an extent,
it depends on the person.
It just depends on what your home life, is. But like, let's say like this person's in early recovery and they don't have custody of their children, and their children's in foster care right now. And, the family brings them this big Thanksgiving dinner because they didn't know that their kids were in foster care right now. I know a girl who was like that this church brought her all this food for her Christmas, and it was her first Christmas that she wasn't spending with her kids, and it made it a lot worse. So I just think, and I don't think, people don't think of it like that. I just think it's going to be big on communication, and for people to, especially when they're in early recovery, for you not to expect them to maybe respond in the ways that, somebody who, like I would respond at this point. They're not in a good place, and a lot of people who are in recovery have hit their rock bottom, and everybody's rock bottom is different. I was talking to my son's father's mom about that today. I was like, listen, my rock bottom to getting myself turned around was not Hudson's father's rock bottom. This could be his rock bottom. It cannot be his rock bottom. So a lot of the people who are in recovery, they have hit their rock bottom. So I think that's a good reminder for people to know, listen, when this person's in early recovery, they have, they're on their complete rock bottom. They're not standing on it. They're not sitting on it. They're laying flat on it, face down, and you just got to kind of keep that in your mind. And I think that's a good reminder and an idea of where their mindset is.
Stacey, you have been so quiet.
Yeah, my house has been loud over the past 15 minutes, so I've just been muted. But yeah, I think what you said is it's really important for us as the church, as Christians, to see that we need to meet people in recovery where they are. God meets us sinners where we are. And we just need to do that. And it may look different based on the stage of recovery that you're in. Like it may be that we need to be more nice in the beginning and more lenient and more graceful and more forgiving about things. But then as you go through the recovery process, maybe you need to be more disciplined now. you know.
Mhm.
So I think that just take lessons of what God does in Scripture, and we can come up with all kinds of ways to be a better people, be a better community, and a better church
And I think we just
than
need
what
to
we're currently
listen.
doing, and
And I
listen.
think as the church, sometimes we come in with these preconceived notions about what recovery should look like, or, we've seen it in the movies, or you know, um, I think one of the things that for me was super eye-opening was I went to an open AA meeting. And anybody can go to an open AA meeting or NA meeting. Of course, you can if you're if you're a normie, you can't go to closed meetings. But if you're a normie, you can go to an open meeting, but you just sit there and you listen. I think that was super opening for me. Here's the funny thing. I had to do that for part of that continuing ed thing that I talked about, that intensive 14-day continuing ed. I had to go to so many open AA meetings before that. And of course, I was the preacher's wife, and I was, in my ordination process as well. But I had some people from the church that were very upset that I was attending AA meetings close to town, close to where we were at, because they didn't want people in the community to talk about the preacher's wife going into an AA meeting. And I thought, and they didn't really know me. We were kind of new. They didn't know if I was in recovery or not. And I thought, this is terrible. It was really kind of ugly things. And they didn't want people in the community to think that their pastor's wife could be an alcoholic. And so that was pretty rough. One of the things that I think is important for you to talk about, that we were talking about over the last couple of weeks, is I think when people don't understand substance abuse and recovery, they think that you go through recovery, and once you graduate from recovery, that your desire to use whatever your substance is, your cravings, just go away. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and you'll hear addicts, you're not an ex-addict. You're not, you aren't in recovery. You are in recovery, and you are an addict, or you are an alcoholic. You may not be an active addiction, but you are still an addict. And that comes in all different shapes and sizes. Some people who are addicts, they can't gamble because they'll pick all of that up, and then there's some, addicts who they're just addicted to a certain substance, and they're able to control that. So it comes in every sort of way, shape and form. But it's a constant battle. And I think that's why, you do have people who relapse, years and years and years out from it. But you can be in such a better place. You can still, you can be happy. I'm probably in one of the best places in my life that, I've been in a long time, mentally, physically, I'm happy. There's lots of people who tell me, from, I call it my old life, but they're like, you just look so much happier. You can tell you're so much happier. But there may be a day that I wake up that morning with just the urge to use for no reason, and you don't really want to use, you don't want to go down that path, but you have that hankering for whatever reason, and it can just be the way the sun's shining, and it reminds you of a day that you used, or, it doesn't have to be a sad day, it can be a happy day. You could just be driving in the road, and all of a sudden you have the urge to use. It's something that people still have, 9 and 10 years down the road. And that's why people continue to go to meetings 9 to 10 years down the road. Sometimes people won't have gone to a meeting for 6 months, and then, wake up and just need to go to that meeting that day. And that's where, your recovery community, and hopefully, eventually people could look at the church community that way as well, because a big thing that they teach you in recovery is talking about it. Your relapse happens in your head before it actually happens. You're relapsing before you actually go and you pick up your substance, or you drink, you take a drink. Or people who are addicted to gambling, or before you go out and gambling, it starts in your head. So, you're supposed to talk about it. So we have a group message, and anytime any of us are feeling like that, we send a message in our group message. So you have people to hold you accountable, so the church would be a great place if people were able to go and openly say, hey, I have been doing great, but today I'm just really having an urge to use. I'm really having an urge to drink. You don't hear a lot of people will do that constantly. Every single day our group message goes off, somebody saying that. I'm just letting you know so y'all can hold me accountable. I don't really hear that in the church very often with people like that.
I can remember the first time that I heard Anna talk about a craving. It absolutely freaked me out and sent me into a tailspin, because I thought, we've been doing so well. She's been doing so good. Holy crap, she has a craving. And I went to a friend of mine that is in recovery, and I said to her, I don't know what to do. She's talking about these cravings. What do I do? And what she said to me was this. She said, she's talking to you about cravings. That is good. When she stops talking about the cravings and is hiding the cravings, that's when you need to worry. And she said, you just say, okay, like, don't give advice. Ask her, what do we need to do? What can we do today? What do we, but I also think something that I have learned through Anna's process, and it's her process, but it's also our process as her family. We've been in, she's done the work, but we've been on the sidelines watching and endured. I think that's a good word. We've endured it. And it's kind of emotional to even think about, and I'm not gonna it's not my place to give advice to anyone who is in recovery. Now, if they ask me my opinion about something life skill wise, that's different, or relationship wise, that's different. But I can't talk to anybody in active recovery about how to handle some of those issues.
Yeah. Am I allowed to say the P word on here?
Yes.
Okay, because it's more than mad. Nothing will piss me off more than somebody who has never had addiction problems, who has never been in recovery, to try to tell me how to recover. Nothing will piss me off more than that and turn me away from that at all. That would be like me going to somebody that builds houses and trying to tell them that's not how you build a house. It's very frustrating because people you will never understand fully unless you've gone through it, kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that we don't want your support and your open-mindedness and you're willing to listen, but nothing will make me more mad than somebody who has never been in recovery being like, oh, well, you chose to do that, or you just need to do that. Like, you just need to do this so you can do that.
You just need not to do it, and you shouldn't have started it in the first place.
Yeah.
So something that will piss me off, and I'm a normie, so I it's probably shouldn't, but it does me, because when you hear Christians, specifically preachers, say, well, they just need Jesus.
Oh, Lord.
That sends chills down. Like, I get so mad when I hear it. And you hear that about all kinds of things, but specifically with drugs. Oh, they just need Jesus.
So there are some Christian recovery programs, and I won't mention which ones they are, that really have this idea of just introduce people to Jesus and their cravings go away. Well, you might have said piss, but that's just a bunch of bullshit. I mean, that's what it is, So you just have to change the rating. Sorry.
This went
bowling. No, I was just going to say bowling.
I'm scared. I can't talk now. I'm supposed to one up somebody.
You have to one up us. Yeah.
This went from PG to PG-13.
Yeah, but it really is, and it's insensitive at best. It is harmful, because I've known people who love Jesus with all they have, and when you say that to them, if they relapse or they have cravings and they feel like they somehow failed Jesus, or that Jesus isn't working for them, I don't know. It's just, it makes me so angry that I can't see straight.
And I'll add on to that too. So, a lot of the recovery based, whether it be AA, NA, they have like HA, that's like Heroin's Anonymous, whatever. They may not come out and say, oh, we're Christian based. But at the end of the day, they always go to your higher power. That's how they started off to be. And they usually try to lead you into the church. So, they might not start out being like, well, you need to sit down and pray and talk to God. They're like, you need to sit down and you need to talk to your higher power and you need to figure that out. So, I think that they don't push Christianity on people so fast. And I honestly feel like the church could work on that a little bit. Although, they're coming to church, it can be a lot if people are just telling you, because you hear a lot of people in church say too, well, I prayed to God to not let this happen. If this is, if he had ill intentions to not let this happen, I promise you that it wasn't God that, sent down into his head and told him, okay, don't do this, or he'll stay clean because he's following God. No, it's not that. You can still relapse and be a Christian. Just because you found God doesn't mean he's going to take your cravings away. Just because you pray to God doesn't mean he's going to take your cravings away. It's one of those things, and I think the church is likely to kind of push that onto people.
It's that hammer and nail that I'm hitting every single week. It's we have too much of an emphasis on it being instantaneous, and obviously Christ can do stuff like that. That's not the normal way that he saves us. It's usually
like
a
it's
slow
testing him. If
Yeah.
you're here to take my cravings away,
If you're real, then
And-
let me not have this
and
craving
when
anymore.
people tell people, especially people in addiction like that aren't sure where they fall on their line of Christianity, if they believe in God, if they believe in any of that, when people tell them, oh well, you just need to find Jesus, you just need to pray to God, you need to get on your knees and you need to really pray to God, and then their cravings don't go away. They're like, he's not listening, he's not there, he's not
You
doing
don't
it
care.
for me. Yeah.
If there's any one thing that we beat people over the head week in and week out on this podcast, it's that salvation is a process, and that salvation isn't just about going to heaven. And I think that's the totality of this. It's if the church is just concentrating on getting you into church to get you saved, whatever they consider saved, then that's all they're going to do. So they're going to do these things to just try to wiggle you into church. It's so the concentration's not really your rehab or your recovery. It's to get you into church to get you saved. So
and that the
for
normal
different
way
folks.
that Christ works with people is through community and through others type thing. It's not just go away from other people who are struggling and stuff like that and just pray about it, but no, work with people who are close to you, who you trust, who you can, like you mentioned, hold you accountable and things like that. That is how Christ asks us to be him to the world.
I think too, you were talking earlier about like the community meals and the food pantry and stuff that we do in Starbucks. I think for me, when we are doing community meals, what I'll call ministries of mercy, if you will, I understand that it's hard to come to the church that's helping you. But my hope is we're giving folks a different glimpse of what the church could possibly be, so they find somewhere where they can explore who God is. That we're showing folks that not every church is super judgmental and it's going to tell you that if you only knew Jesus, everything would be great. Because frankly, I know Jesus and my life has been hell the last 2 years, right? Like this may have been the hardest on Anna of that, but this has been the worst and hardest year of my life as her mom. And there were days that I didn't think I was going to survive. And I needed to be authentic with church people. And honestly, I don't know what I would have done had the people surrounding me bailed on me. Like if they had said, oh, well, you all have got this issue in your family and screw you, you can't be all that much of a Christian then or whatever. I mean, honestly, I don't know what I would have done. So I want people to know that not all Christians are that judgmental kind of thing. Now, what I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're all judgmental to a certain degree. And even I'll find myself being mad at somebody or saying, good gravy, they know better than that. Or why did they pick that back up? Or, they're going down that path again. I mean, and I try really hard not to be that way. So people who don't try, they're going to come across very harsh.
Well, I mean, there's a difference, and that goes along with setting healthy boundaries too. Like what I'm going to say is like, you can not be judgmental, but you can also not be naive. Like, don't let people necessarily take advantage of you being nice.
And that's what the lady meant by you have no right to do this. I'm in a different place now. Right? My naivety gone. I mean, there's still probably some of it there. Not just because of this. I mean, this has really helped with some of that naivety. But because of what I've done through the years, because I've been authentic with people and because they've been authentic with me. But 10 years ago, I would have been an enabler. People would have come to me, oh, I need $100 for my electric. Okay, here you go. Probably not using $100 for their electric, So you're right. That night, you've got to know when not to be naive.
And just do that without being like, over. Okay, I kind of think of like, if somebody was at the church and you think they're using, you're going to set these kinds of rules or, whatnot. You've got to do that in a way where it's not going to make them feel isolated, but don't be so naive, to put yourself, I guess, or put whatever in jeopardy, make them feel accepted. And then once they're farther along into their recovery or into their journey, or they feel like they can trust you, they're going to open up to that. And that's going to open up a window maybe for them to explore, Jesus or the church or whatnot. I think a great way for, like how we do the community meals and that kind of thing is letting people know that they can come and help at these community meals. Not that they're just there to serve the community meals, but they can come and help and do that too. I think that's a big one too, because I don't feel like they will feel as isolated. Maybe that way, oh, I have to go to church to get this meal. Oh, well, I can go and get a meal this month, but they offered or they told me that, we need volunteers if anybody would want to come and help. They gave me the opportunity to come back and help somebody else. I think a lot of the times the church is there to serve. People will go to the food pantry. They're not asked to volunteer in the food pantry. Not that we want to make them feel like they need to come and, help out.
I'll put them to work that come to my food pantry.
But and my mom, listen, I'll tell you, there's not a whole lot of people, a lot of people wouldn't want to come around, my family. I'm the edgiest actually that there is. I'm the edgiest one probably out of mom. Well, I don't know. Mom,
not my side.
Mom or dad, especially the Atchleys for sure, but they all feel comfortable around my mom. She does a very good way of doing that. But, I feel like a lot of the times the church just wants to help, give them the food pantry or give them food out of the food pantry and doesn't really think that maybe, they could offer them to come and help out in the food pantry and get them into the church and talking that way. Maybe they don't want to just have the handouts and they can be like, hey, we do the food pantry every day. If you're ever, wanting to come and do help, whatever, some sort of way, mom would be able to figure out a good way to say that. But
that's a really interesting point.
Or, even people that are coming and doing community service, don't be so judgmental. I know my mom was talking about starting, a nursery for our community meals. And there was people that had asked her, well, are these ladies that are needing a nursery, are they only having to come because they have community service?
Why does it matter?
Whether they have to have community service or not, that's a good way for them to put their foot in. They're being forced to put their foot in here. Why not put your best foot forward?
So I think too, especially when people are early in recovery, they don't have any sense of self-worth. They're so focused on all the stuff they can't do, or they're not good enough, or their self-esteem is in the toilet.
When you're in the beginning of recovery, you're very much in shame and you're not in guilt yet. When you cross over from being in shame and you cross over to being in guilt, then you start building the bridges back up to, this is what I've done wrong. This is what I need to change. But just like being in early recovery, you are very ashamed of just everything. And that's very dark. very like lonely, and that's a big thing. You've got to decipher, am I still in shame over this, or am I now in guilt? Because shame is very unhealthy and guilt is very healthy. Guilt means you are ready to change, and shame means you don't want people to know.
So what I've found with people who are really early and they're still in that shame thing, anything I can find for them to do, even if I'm inventing something for them to do, as long as they feel like they're contributing to that, even if I have to go back and redo whatever it is, it's so important that they feel like they're contributing to what is going on. So I'm a huge proponent of finding, just like with our little kids, our little kids want to help all the time. And it's not always helpful for us to have little kids helping us. Sometimes it makes the job longer. Sometimes it makes it harder. But it's so vitally important into building those relationships that they feel like they're contributing, even if it's simply taking the garbage out, or only if it's actually needed. Don't invent garbage for them to take to the garbage, because they see through that. They know when they're being truly helpful and not being, and you're just kind of placating them.
Well, y'all had asked me earlier in the podcast, like what made me, want to share my story or willing to share my story. And I think I was willing to share my story and open up about it after I had crossed the line from shame to guilt. And I've, even I think you'll always be guilty about what you've done, but once you've changed, you don't feel that constant guilt, but it's a long road before you get out of the shame, and you really need people to stand there before you feel like you have to have people you trust before you can even pass over into the guilt, to where you feel like you can trust them to tell them, hey, this is what I've done. This is, I really want to make amends with this. It's really hard to get out of that dark hole of shame. And, if you don't feel like you have a community, or you don't feel like you have people to trust. So people in early community, if you can lay down a relationship with them and stuff, then they may get to the point where they want to cross over into guilt and, talk to you about it and open up. And that would really encourage people to move on in their road in recovery, because you can only get so far while you're still in shame. That's a big roadblocker for a lot of people.
Wow.
What other questions
Really good
y'all
point.
have?
So I have one question. I meant to ask it earlier.
I knew you
It's
would.
probably not the best place in the podcast, since we're getting ready to wrap up. I'm going to go ahead and ask it. I may edit it out. So I'm wondering, because marijuana is a political hot button issue. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so the progressive in me wants to know, just as someone in recovery, what is your opinion of marijuana? How should it be used? Should it be used for recreation? And again, I'm probably going to edit this part out.
Well, Anna has used the term trauma a lot, and I know that we're running late, and this is probably going to have to be two podcasts at this point. But I think it's important to understand that what is traumatic for one person may or may not be traumatic for another. And that's kind of where the judgment also comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't get to judge what is traumatic for you and what is traumatic for somebody else. Some of us absorb trauma and deal with it better than others, and there are a lot of things that contribute to that. It is not a strength or a mentally strong person or whatever. There is a wonderful book. It's a little academic, but it's called The Addicted Brain. And I looked up who wrote it, and so that, because I knew you would ask. And The Addicted Brain, where'd it go? Is written by Michael Kuhar. I think that's how you say it. It's Kuhr. And I was sharing with Anna a couple of days ago when we were kind of talking about whether she'd come on this. And when her dad and I knew that she was struggling, and I wouldn't say that she was in active addiction at this point, but we knew that's where it was going. And there wasn't a whole lot that we could do to stop it at that stage. There are some things that I wish I could go back and do differently that may or may not have changed things for Anna. I don't know. But I can remember listening to this man speak, and he is talking about the addicted brain and some of the characteristics that they have been identified in people even early on, and looking at Aaron and saying, he is describing our Anna, right? Like he is describing our Anna. And it was, I mean, this is not going to be a shocker for me. It was really emotional for me because I knew at that point that all the things that I was trying to do to prop her up, to make her successful, to move her out of a certain place, to set her up somewhere else, was going to fail until she decided that this was not what she wanted. Right.
Well, and that's where it comes down to that everybody's rock bottom's different too.
Yeah. So it's a great resource. It really combats the idea that addiction is a moral failing issue. It really helps people understand the chemistry that happens in the brain. Anna talked about dopamine a little bit, but it helps you understand some of that stuff.
It explains it more, I think. Well, I haven't read it. I don't like to read, but I don't enjoy it. I'm too ADHD. But anyways, where border or addiction goes from a choice to a disease, I think when you choose to use a drug, that's your choice. But then I do think it comes over into a disease because of the chemical imbalances in your head. That goes along with the, people don't choose to wake up and feel that way every day. They might have chose to do that drug, but I promise you, not a single one of us wake up to and want to feel like that every single day. Not, that even though you're happy and you still feel the need, like you still feel like you need it. You can be in the best place in your life and still feel like you need it. It's just a complete chemical imbalance in your head. And sometimes it never gets 100% back right. You just never really know.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right. Well, we have talked a very long time at this point.
Sorry.
No, it's good. Anna,
Very good. Yeah.
thank you so much for being able to come on, publicly and talk about this and the TikTok video. I watched a lot of your TikTok videos as well.
And
yeah, I do. And I think it's amazing what you do with your recovery. And, I think it's heroic even to be able to use your trials for the greater good. You are helping people that were in your shoes or in your shoes now. So I'm very thankful for people like you and thanks for coming on the podcast and being open with us. And hopefully that nothing was said that made you uncomfortable or anything.
It was, and I would have told you if it did.
Okay. Good deal. All right. Well, that'll do us for now. So peace be to you and have a good night. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really hope you got some enjoyment out of the podcast this week. Remember to check out our website, www.appalachianliturgy.com, and follow us on all of our social medias. If you want an easy way to support us, though, make sure to subscribe to our channels and like our videos on YouTube. Also, join our email list for updates and let us know how we're doing. See you next week, everyone. Appalachian Liturgy Podcast is a JRS Studios production.